The E versus 5, it's a tale as old as time, or at least as old as automotive rivalries go. But traditionally, settling this debate was a fairly simple exercise. Love to drive? Pick the 5. Love to be driven around? The E-Class was your throne. But it's not as simple as that anymore. Since long wheelbase is the theme of this story, let's start this comparison with the rear seat experience in these two sedans. The E-Class gets these nice flush door handles. They look quite cool, but it requires a little more effort than usual to open the door. Now the other thing is, it is quite a small door if you notice, because the rear quarter glass panel is not here, it's attached in here. This is, they say it's Maybach style. So yes, it definitely feels special, but the thing is, the door is quite small and getting in and out, it definitely feels like a bit of a compromise because the seat is quite low. So yes, if you're old, your bones, especially your knee, would definitely feel the brunt of it. But once you're perched in here, it feels like you've entered a 5-star suite of a luxury hotel because everything here screams luxury, everything is sumptuous, and all the components, the touch and feel, everything is just phenomenal. Now, I'll quickly touch upon the main highlights of this cabin. Now, first and foremost, it gets seats that can be reclined. So you have electric controls over here on the door, and with that, you can recline the rear seat, or you can make it more upright. So this can be reclined up to 36 degrees. So that is one of the main highlights of this cabin. Apart from that, it also gets this extendable under thigh support, again electrically controlled. And more importantly, this gets this button, which is called the chauffeur package. So you press this button, it goes red, and from these very controls, you can now move the front seat back and forth. You can also fold it, and that opens up a lot more legroom. So if you want to lounge in here, well, there's nothing better than the E-Class in this segment. In addition to that, you also get electrically controlled blinds. So these window blinds, well, they are electrically controlled on both the windows. You also have electric controls for the sun blind at the back and also for the sunshade. So with the press of a button, well, now you're completely isolated from the outside world. Among other things, the E-Class gets 4-zone climate control, so passengers at the back on both the seats can individually set the controls for AC at the back. This is a touch panel, so it's quite nice to use. Now, as for the third passenger, well, you can't accommodate an individual over here because the transmission tunnel is quite high. So I think this is strictly a 4-seater. On the upside though, you've got this foldable armrest, which is quite huge, and it also gets a smartphone charger, wireless charger. So I think overall that really elevates the experience that passengers get at the back because you've got a lot more tech and it has all the creature comforts that you'd want. Now, in addition to that, I also love these neck pillows because they are quite soft and comfy. They're quite cushiony, and I also love these side mounted AC vents because on a hot day, they really are very efficient, very effective. So overall, I think the E-Class, well, it brings its A game, especially in the rear bench. So let's now jump into the 5 Series and see if it can match it or if it has the measure of the E-Class long wheelbase. Compared to the E-Class, the 5 Series gets these old school door latches, quite plasticky, and I don't think they make sense in a 1 crore rupee sedan. However, having said that, well, the door opening, it is quite big. It is a grand opening in that sense, and it feels like you're entering a ballroom or some sorts of that. So yes, getting in and out is done very comfortably, especially given the seat height. It's also quite high, so you can sit here quite comfortably. So in terms of getting in and out, I think the 5 Series is the better bet. Compared to the E-Class, the 5 Series definitely feels roomier, and that is understood because it is the larger vehicle of the two and it also has the longer wheelbase. You don't really have to sink in these seats. Now, apart from that, what I'm feeling right now is that the seat cushioning is also softer compared to the E-Class. The E-Class's seats feel a little firm, but this one, it is supple and it definitely has higher comfort factor. And of course, because the test car, the 5 Series, is finished in this walnut brown interior, so it definitely feels much nicer than the all black interior of the E-Class that we have on test here. Now, once you're done appreciating the space inside the 5 Series cabin and you start looking for creature comforts, well, that's when you find out that this cabin is seriously lacking because it doesn't have all the bells and whistles that you get with the E-Class. First of all, the seats are fixed, they can't be reclined. So that is one thing. And most importantly, it doesn't even get sunshades for the rear windows. So that is a glaring omission, I think, compared to the E-Class. It feels a little bare basic. Of course, BMW offers it as an accessory, but those are manual sunshades and they are quite fidgety to use, so it adds to the complication. So I'd rather suggest you don't buy them. So that is something that you definitely miss. And more importantly, it doesn't also get a rear blind. So in this cabin, it doesn't feel as luxurious or as sumptuous as the E-Class because all these creature comforts are missing. Of course, it also gets 4-zone climate control like the E-Class, but these touch controls over here, they don't feel as good as they are on the E-Class, and there is not a lot of functionality in here as well. The other thing, the AC vents, they feel quite flimsy as well, and they don't feel as robust as they are in the E-Class. Of course, like the E-Class, it also gets these side vented AC vents, but they are sort of hidden behind the seat. And speaking of the front seat, well, you don't also get that boss button, that chauffeur package where you can electrically move the seat forward. So again, that is a big miss. And I think in terms of the rear seat space, yes, the BMW has an edge over the E-Class, but overall, if you talk about the experience, if you talk about the luxury factor, I think the E-Class is definitely the better bet than the 5 Series, at least in this department. The good thing is the transmission tunnel is relatively low, so a third passenger can sit here for shorter durations, and also the seat squab is quite wide on this car, so you can accommodate a third passenger in here for shorter duration, of course. Now, you also get this foldable armrest, which is quite lovely to use, and it also gets a wireless phone charger. You've got 2 cup holders over here, and this armrest also opens up, so there is some bit of storage here. But unlike the E-Class, there are no USB Type-C ports here. Instead, in the 5 Series, you get the USB ports on the back of the front seats, and there is a coat hanger in this test car, so it makes accessing that USB port quite difficult. So the E-Class is offered in 3 engine options in India. You have the diesel, which is E20D. You have E200, which is a 2-liter 4-cylinder petrol engine. And then you have the E450, which is this one. And this is powered by a 3-liter 6-cylinder petrol motor. And it's an absolute weapon in terms of outright performance because this delivers 380 horsepower and 500 Newton meters of torque. So that's nearly AMG levels of performance. And in terms of outright performance, well, it does 0 to 100 in 4.5 seconds. So that is quite quick. Having said that, well, yes, in terms of performance, there is absolutely nothing lacking in this engine. But in terms of outright thrills, well, this engine, it doesn't quite suit the purpose of this vehicle, I have to say. So it is around 15 lakh rupees extra over the E200. But I have to say, these 2 petrol engines, well, they are both at extremes because the E200, it is quite boring and quite uninspiring to drive, but this E450, it is quite explosive. So totally 2 ends of the spectrum. So probably I would have preferred something in between, which would have offered decent performance without feeling boring. Okay, having said that, yes, this engine is super refined, it is brilliant, and you can't really fault this powertrain at all because the 9-speed automatic gearbox is also wonderful and it is really an absolute peach. But overall, if you're not driving yourself, I don't think you should be investing that kind of money for the E450. And if you're just going to launch in at the back, I think the diesel or even the 200 would be the better bet. Now, like any other modern Mercedes, this also gets that e-boost feature. So it has an electric motor which kind of assists you. So it has, I think, 20 bhp and 250 newton meters of boost function during acceleration that it gives it to you. And yes, the acceleration is phenomenal, like I already said. But the one thing that I've noticed driving it in the city, especially stop-go traffic, is that this whole vehicle, it feels a little heavy, and at low city speeds, the engine, it feels a little hesitant for some reason. The part throttle inputs are not that responsive, and you can definitely sense some bit of lag. But again, once you move past that threshold, well, then this engine absolutely flies. Unless and until you're going to drive it yourself, I don't think you should be spending that extra money to buy the E450. Now, coming to the driving experience, the ride and handling balance of the E-Class, again, it is spot on because it is a comfort-oriented sedan. So you can feel the suspension is set up accordingly. It is quite supple, it is quite soft, and it takes up virtually everything in its stride without breaking a sweat. It is an absolutely phenomenal suspension. Everything you see on the road, it kind of flattens it. And I think that's the beauty of the E-Class, because if you're sitting in here, you're not going to notice anything on the road. The suspension for our road conditions, well, it's tuned perfectly. However, what is missing is that it doesn't get adaptive dampers. So if you are in a mood of sporty driving because of this engine E450, so you don't really get that taut feeling from the suspension, and the vehicle always feels heavy. And I think that's why you should further distance yourself from the E450, because it has the straight line performance, but in terms of a proper driver sedan, it is lacking because the suspension is essentially comfort oriented. Now, having said that, in terms of comfort, of course, there is no problem at all, and you're going to love the ride quality, and you'll get your money's worth in terms of ride quality when you're sitting at the back, because the suspension is soft. At high speeds, it just wafts along perfectly, and it is a quiet cabin. So overall, if you're going to be chauffeur driven most of the time, well, you're going to love this experience. The only place where you might have a hint of discomfort is really low speed ride on bad roads or on really big speed breakers. That's when the ride feels a little firm. So that's the only where you notice it, and that's where the vehicle also feels a little heavy going over those bumps because it has long overhangs. And the other thing is the E450 comes with 4MATIC, so that means it's all-wheel drive. So yes, you have the traction of all-wheel drive with this E-Class, but again, if you are behind the wheel, that's when you're going to enjoy it. The steering is also quite nice. It feels really good to hold. It is quite pointy, it is quite communicative, and it is well weighted as well. And you've got different settings to alter the throttle response, the transmission response, and the steering weight also. So it is quite enjoyable, but again, the suspension is a bit of a letdown because it doesn't let you firm up the spring. The 5 Series is offered in a single flavor in India, and that is the 530Li. So that means it's powered by a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo petrol engine. It's good for 255 bhp and 400 Newton meters of torque. So that means there is no diesel, there is no 6-cylinder turbo petrol as well. And that means it's also down in power compared to the E450 that we have on test here. And it's also a full 2 seconds slower to 100 kilometers per hour from 0 compared to the E450. So this does 0 to 100 in 6.5 seconds. Having said that, well, I have to say that it doesn't feel all that slow because this drivetrain is quite sprightly. And that's down to the fact how it's tuned, because it has got that sort of performance. It has that get up and go attitude that you associate with BMWs. All the controls feel light. The transmission is always alert. It is paired to a ZF 8-speed transmission. So that is quite alert, quite urgent all the time. And overall, the speed build-up in this, well, it seems that this is meant for keen drivers. So when you're behind the wheel, the paddle shifters, everything about this drivetrain, it eggs you on to go fast. And yes, it doesn't have that outright punch of the 6-cylinder motor of the Mercedes, and I can definitely feel the mid-range is quite flat on this compared to the 6-cylinder of the Mercedes. So when you come out of a corner and you go for that gas, it is fast, but again, it doesn't have that grunt of the 6-cylinder motor. So yes, if you want that sort of performance, it's missing. And I wish it had the 40i motor from the M340, because that would have completely changed the character of the 5 Series. Another thing that I'm noticing in the 5 Series' drivetrain is that it is slightly noisier compared to the E-Class, especially at high revs. Having said that, it is quite raspy and it is quite sporty, so if you're driving it fast, you are going to enjoy these noises. But of course, if you want complete isolation from outside noises, including the engine noise, I think the 5 Series could do with a little more insulation. It also gets an e-boost feature like the E-Class, but this one is just good for 11 bhp and 23 or 25 newton meters of torque. So yes, it gives that assist, but it is quite mellow in that sense. However, I think the part throttle response in the 5 Series, it is sort of more responsive, as in the engine feels more alert to your inputs for sure. Now let's talk about the ride and handling, because this is really a mixed bag. Now BMW, with this new generation of the 5 Series, especially in India with this 530Li, they have made it overly soft, and that is something that you can feel when you're driving on the road. This suspension is really soft, and you definitely feel it everywhere, whether you are driving on the highway, whether you are driving in the city. It has that really soft and cushy ride quality. But at the same time, it also robs you of some driving pleasure that you'd associate with a BMW. So it definitely feels soft. And like the Mercedes, it doesn't get adaptive dampers. So you're stuck with just one comfort-oriented setting. And I think in this, it's even set for more comfort. So that means it's softer. Now the ride quality is phenomenal. And dare I say, it's actually better than what you get in the E-Class. And I mean all the variants of the E-Class, because this definitely feels more absorbent at low speeds. Even at high speeds, it wafts along like the E-Class. So overall, in terms of ride quality, it is quite surprising, but this is the better sedan here. And again, if I have to be very honest, even in terms of driving pleasure, even though it's overly soft, I have to say that this feels more communicative. It has light controls. The steering is more direct. It doesn't have that weight of the Mercedes wheel, but it definitely feels more communicative. And the nose also feels quite pointy as compared to the E-Class. And more importantly, it feels quite light on its feet, as opposed to the Mercedes, which feels quite heavy during quick direction changes. So yes, this has more body roll for sure, but this somehow feels more communicative and it feels more under control. And it seems that the 5 Series is still enjoying being a BMW. It's propelled from the back, so you can definitely feel that. And again, I have to say this, but if you are going to be driving your long wheelbase sedan more often than not, I think the 5 Series, despite being low on power, it is still the sedan to buy. One more thing that I have noticed while driving the BMW back to back with the Merc is the fact that the visibility out is quite good in the BMW. So the rear view mirrors are quite big. You get a full 360 view of your surroundings. I think in terms of overall visibility also, this is better and more practical car to drive.
When it comes to the features and tech inside, both the 5 Series and E-Class are evenly matched. But they go about their business quite differently. Step inside the BMW and the first thing you notice is its curved HD display. It combines a 12.3-inch digital driver screen with a 14.9-inch central touchscreen. The interface is intuitive, menus are easy to navigate, and the layout feels clean and modern. It's a system designed to make life simple. Now compared to that, Mercedes has gone all out with what it calls the super screen. Not two, but three displays stretch across the dashboard. A 12.3-inch driver display, a 14.4-inch central touchscreen, and a 12.3-inch passenger screen. It's a true screen fest. Visually stunning, for sure. But for some, it may feel cluttered. Even basic controls like air conditioning are buried inside menus, which can be tedious on the move. The E-Class also leans heavily on creating a sense of occasion. You get 64-color ambient lighting that extends to the back seats, a 4D surround sound system with exciters that massage you with sound, and even a selfie camera that doubles as a video conferencing tool. BMW takes a more restrained approach. There's 15 color ambient lighting, a selfie camera for still shots, and a clever iPad mount at the back of the front seats, so rear passengers can stream content on their own devices. Surprisingly, both sedans miss out on a few essentials. There's no rear seat ventilation and no dedicated rear entertainment screens either. That is a bit of a downer considering both these sedans are meant to be enjoyed from the backseat. When it comes to fit, finish, and design of their interiors, it's really a matter of taste. The Mercedes feels rich, plush, and palatial, the kind of place where you sink into the ambience. The BMW, on the other hand, feels like a modern art gallery, minimalistic, timeless, and beautifully sophisticated. That being said, when you step out of it and take a look at the 5 Series' exterior design, the term sophistication is the last thing that comes to mind. The 5 Series' design has been controversial and it's still a cause of debate worldwide. The shark nose bonnet and illuminated grille are bold, but the stretched proportions of this long wheelbase version don't look very elegant or properly balanced for that matter. And those small and boring looking 18-inch wheels don't help its case either. The E-Class takes a safer approach. It's evolutionary rather than revolutionary. Chrome heavy, yes, but cohesive and balanced. It may not turn heads, but it won't split opinion either. The E450 we have on test here gets some AMG treatment like AMG line bumpers and special 5-spoke AMG wheels to give it a more sporty look. But it doesn't make a world of a difference because it looks largely unchanged from the lesser variants. All said, if we had to pick a winner based solely on their exterior design, we would prefer the stately look of the E-Class over the brash and in-your-face approach of the 5 Series.
The 5 Series has the measure of the E-Class in most of the departments. It is more spacious, it's more comfortable, the ride quality is better, and while it may not matter to target audience in this segment, it's also the more engaging sedan to drive. But the E-Class delivers the knockout punch and hits the BMW where it hurts the most, and that is the rear seat experience. You see, the whole premise of a long wheelbase sedan is to pamper you in the rear bench, and that's where the E excels. It is far superior to what the BMW 5 Series offers, especially given its superior list of creature comforts. So overall, you could say that the 5 Series is the more rounded luxury sedan of the two. But when it comes to offering the best long wheelbase luxury sedan experience, the E-Class remains the king of the hill.